Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Jan Erickson from Stepping Aside, and welcome to Somewhat Daily Tarot and Rune for the 12th day of August, 2019. Well, can you imagine where August was it just happened, didn't it? And now we're almost halfway through. Isn't that interesting how that happens? I told you guys last week that my husband was scheduled for jury duty over the next 2 weeks, and so he has to go this afternoon for his orientation, and then we don't know exactly when he's going to be called or if he'll be called. But if he is, I'll be up there with him because I have to take him. And I don't know when these will get posted. They might get posted at different times. I might have to do them like the night before if we have to leave early or something. We'll know, though, in the evening whether or not he has to go the next day. So I'm going to make this happen irrespective of what we're doing. So I just want you to know that you might see these get posted in a little different time, like before we leave or something in the morning, and be a lot sooner than what it than around noonish when they usually go up. So anyhow, I'm going to do it early today as well, because we've got to go up there and find one. There's two different parking spaces, and I don't know. I have no idea. So I have a map. So, anyway, well, I hope everyone had a good weekend. My beans are I've picked beans several times now. I have to freeze some after this. After I get done here, I'm going to freeze some. And I got quite a bit that I snapped yesterday. I was supposed to do it last night, but I forgot. And so anyway, I didn't have room in the freezer anyway because my husband picked blackberries, got enough to freeze. And so he had, a cookie sheet in there already taking up the space I was going to have for my beans. So anyhow. But we froze about 3 pounds of blackberries, and so that's pretty cool. Our chickens get the frozen stuff from the year before. They say you're only supposed to keep stuff so long, but I tend to keep it a little longer. I mean, I'm not going to let my harvest, go away simply because somebody somewhere says, oh no, throw it out after 6 months. They're fine. They're just for smoothies and wine. The blackberry wine is really good. So is the raspberry wine. He's been doing that as well. So, and the dandelion wine he made, oh my God. If you've never had dandelion wine, whew, that stuff's yummy. It's just a really light white wine, and it's subtle, and it's just lovely. So if you have a bunch of dandelions, don't kill them. Use them in tea. Use them in wine. This is the time of year that I'm harvesting as much leaf as I can for the wintertime. I like to use dandelion as a basis for most of my teas, and so dandelion leaf. And then in the spring, well, actually, maybe a month or so before the spring comes, you can start digging roots. As soon as you can start digging in the ground, you can start digging the roots in the spring and in the fall. And you can simmer those. Don't boil them, just simmer. Bring them to a simmer. Simmer them for about 20 minutes and strain it. And you can use that then as your boiling water, essentially, even though it shouldn't be boiling. But still, you can use it to pour over additional dried herb if you want, or you can just drink it as is. And save your roots. I freeze mine. You can use roots, like maybe 3 times before they're pretty much used up. So don't throw them away. Just stick them in a little container in a plastic bag or something, a baggie and freezer bag, and stick it in the freezer for the next time you want to do that. And then, use them a couple, 2-3 times, and then they should be probably tossed at that point. Whenever you look in my freezer here in the kitchen, not the big one, but the one attached to my refrigerator, there's always little baggies of roots in there. My husband will go like, which is this? But usually it's just usually dandelion that I put in there anymore. I don't really put anything else in there. That way it doesn't get confusing. Half the time if I write something on there, it's gone anyway. So I don't know, by the time I get back to it, it's all sort of worn off. So to save on confusion of, oh my God, what roots are those? I just put dandelion in there. I don't anymore. I don't struggle with trying to remember what the heck I did. Anyhow. Well, let's go ahead and get started. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you're back, thank you so much for coming back. Click subscribe if you haven't. I'd love you to do that. Oh, and a new thing on the blog, what I did, I've been kind of thinking about changing the moon information. I'm torn between doing like daily correspondences or what have you, versus for magic versus having some kind of a moon post. And so I was trying to do them together. And I think at this point I've separated it. And what I'm doing now is instead of the every other day moon posts, what I'm going to do is weekly. I started a series this week called Weekly Rune and Moon. So anyway, I'm going to be looking at runic influences for each week. Also, I'm going to include when the moon changes, I'll include what the moon is in. Also, I'm going to include human design information regarding the moon. The thing about human design, which is really interesting if you've not seen it, it uses planetary information, but it blends it with the I Ching, with all of the hexagrams from the I Ching. And given that there are 6 lines of the hexagram, there's 6 different possibilities associated with that particular gua or hexagram. There's 64 of them. And it's the most amazing system. And I think I even probably like it better than astrology, but I mean, go check it out over at jovianarchive.org. And just see or read some stuff I've written on it there on the blog. I think there's actually a section or maybe there's a tab on human design, or maybe I changed it to include a whole bunch of other stuff. I don't know. I don't remember now, but basically it's just different. And I don't know. It just seems to align really well with everyday experiences. And it's really the influence of the I Ching, I think, that's doing that. It's just the most amazing system. Anyway, I like to include different viewpoints essentially in what I do. And so that's why I kind of do different divination methods and just different types of astrological stuff. It's just interesting. So anyhow, I like to just find different ways to bring together and just to give more information. It's all. So anyhow, check that out. That's up. And then going forward, we'll see how, what format the correspondences take. But I do want to have, just something that focuses, and that was the whole point of the moon post, was just to have it from a witch's perspective instead of from an astrological perspective, really. I mean, it's nice to know how it all affects us and everything, but mostly it was from a work in magic perspective. So I'm going to actually take it back to that focus, and maybe this will take the rest of it or something. I don't know. I want to cover it all. I don't know. I just got kind of bored doing it that way. So I decided to mix it up. Anyhow, let's get started and take our first card. Now, if you haven't been here, I do this randomly. I'm going to take 3 or 4 cards, depending on how I feel. And I'm going to take the 13th one each time. I was born on the 13th of October. And so 13 figures prominently into my life. So that's just my process. It does not have to be yours. So anyhow, let's get started with the first card. We have a 3 energy today, as since it's the 12th, that reduces to 3. We start with the Queen of Pentacles. What are we going to manifest today? And it may have something to do with the mundane aspects of life. Pentacles is the earth element. We see the Queen sitting quietly on her throne, just sort of off by herself, thinking, reflecting. Queens have a very reflective presence, as opposed to the projective presence of the king. This can either have to do with a woman in authority, perhaps you, or the feminine side of self. where you're thinking about others, where maybe you're thinking about compassion, um, shared purpose, shared abundance. But the queen is an authority figure. She's an older woman. And given that she's pentacles, you know, and the earth element, she's all about the mundane aspects of life. So legacy, tradition, wealth, shared abundance again. But but as always with a court card, it's like, yeah, so what's that about? You know, we don't really know, do we? Without something to interact with, all we know is maybe some issues of home and hearth are involved, maybe. But we don't know if it has to do with us or maybe an older woman in our lives. So let's take another card. Well, here we have the Four of Wands, the fire element. And here we see four staves, two on either side in balance, representing a doorway into new experiences. We see a couple holding their bouquets, I guess, up high in celebration. You see the castle behind them, some other people there to the left, or to my left anyway. You see an arched bridge over the top, I'm assuming a body of water, like a little river or a creek or something. There always seems to be some kind of body of water, you know, separating out the road to the castle, you know, from the people inside the castle, from those who want to get there. So you see a nice concrete arched bridge or something there. We see the garlands above in an X pattern. For us, about respite, it's about foundation, it's about structure. And here we're embarking upon something new. In harmony with others, or at least with one other person, at least. Some reciprocity here, buildings towards something new. Something new is manifesting. But it's doing it in balanced energy exchange with others. You know, when you get married, assuming that's what's going on here, and I'm assuming that's what this is, you know, you're starting to build a new life together, a whole new foundation for you and the person that you're embarking upon this new journey with. Maybe you're going to have a family, maybe you're going to, you know, have a business together or something, you know, but you're going to build something, even if it's just simply your relationship. You're building on something. And it seems to have a focus on maybe tradition and establishing legacy and establishing shared purpose and abundance with the Queen of Pentacles. So a new direction in balance with someone else. Let's do another card. Well, we have the King of Cups. Now, the Kings, as those of you who've been here before, excuse me, no, I'm not a fan of the Kings. This King is looking toward the future, whereas the Queen is pretty much focused in the present moment, you see. She's not looking back. She's not, even though she's kind of turned in that direction, that's to me is just about tradition and legacy and shared purpose, right? But here she's basically looking down at her lap, at the pentacle on her lap, on the big coin, as it were, about all that she has. So she's right in the present moment, isn't she? With a respect toward the past, okay, but she's still focused in the present moment. Here, he's not looking us in the eye. The King of Cups can be quite passive aggressive when he needs to be or wants to be, when he's a little bit ill-dignified. You see a scepter in his left hand and a chalice in his right. He's basically floating on the water. He's very changeable, very unstable at times. He doesn't stay focused on the here and now. So a lot of the time he's lost in emotion, a lost. He could be manipulative. He could be. I mean, he can be compassionate. You know, cups is the water element in our emotions, intuition, and all of that. But the king is it's interesting here because I'm going to put this up this way, just visually. Let's see, nope. Wait, we want to do it this way. I want to show, I have to always do things in the on the screen here backwards. So this is what it looks like to me when I lay them down. I want you to notice something here visually. We have, even though I have said that the queen is looking down and depicting the present moment, in a sense, they aren't looking at one another, are they? They just aren't. His head is somewhere else, and it always has been. His heart has always been somewhere else. It's never in the present moment. It's never in what's taking place right now. He's always somewhere else in his thoughts, in his mind, in his heart, in his emotions. He's always somewhere else. He seems aloof, where she seems very present and very involved. But what we have here, so far, we just have the energy of the four at work, because we don't generally assign numbers to the core cards. If we did, however, it would be 11, 12, 13, and 14. So the queen would be 4 and would align with the structure and the balanced energy exchange of the 4 of wands, whereas the king is a 5 energy and would be, you know, about change and fulfillment. And given that we're dealing with the suit of cups and the emotions, change and unstable energy is present. Let's do a 4th card. See if we can just get one more thing. We might find the synchronicity with all of this, tying everything together, maybe with the rune that I'll draw out of the bag here. I use the Elder Futhark for this, and then finally, what I'll do is I'll create a geomancy rune by throwing my 4 geomancy elemental runes down, and then we'll see what we come up with. But right now, I like how the queen and the king surround this balanced energy exchange. I'm not convinced that the king is capable of this. The king gets wrapped up in his own thing. He does not tend to see the forest for the trees. Oftentimes, he's so caught up in the arrogance of his own power and authority and control that he can't really look at things in terms of the greater aspect of self. You know, he has a very difficult time doing that. You would think that a leader would be able to do that, and there are those that can, but all too often the king is wrapped up in himself, and whereas it's the queen that's able to then look on the people in her kingdom and understand that they need her and that without her they don't have anything, and all of that they would have a very difficult time. And so that she's there for them, basically. And whereas with kings, we're there for the king. So you can see the different directionality in terms of how we interact with these people. Much easier to talk to mom, maybe, than it is to dad. And sometimes that's not true. Sometimes the reverse is true. But all I'm saying is that we have 2 kinds of authority here: the earth element and the water element. And in the center, we have balanced energy exchange and a new way forward, a new doorway to new experiences. So you might think then that the queen and the king could be about legacy in the past, and the 4 we're going on to a new type of understanding, a new type of relationship, maybe. In fact, let's do that. Let's move the queen and the king together, and let's put the 4 on the end. You could say that they're not really communicating anymore, and now it's time for something new. So this could be a relationship that perhaps is finding its end, and or it could be this is what's happening. Perhaps their children have grown up, and now they're marrying, and they're going to go start lives of their own. That could be this. and they're taking from mom and dad what, what they can, and using to help them in their future, all that they've learned maybe. You could say that you want to have a strong foundation in your life, with tradition and income, and a home, and building something for the future. That could be the Queen of Pentacles. And then the King, since he is kind of looking toward the future, you might view that as just keep an eye on the future, keep your intuition alive, be aware of opportunities that might present themselves, and don't get stuck in the mundane, and be willing to and be open to change. You could have that, and that could be the foundation for the Four. So these two could be actually the message that perhaps they've given to their kids as they've grown up, and now maybe one of them is ready to go start a new life with someone else. Let's do a fourth card. Because it's, you had a king and a queen on either side, I was tempted, to stop, with just three, because I like that feeling of inclusion, of termination on either end. I like that feeling. But here we have a decision that's being made. And again, we see, wow, here we have it right here. Now look very carefully at the two. We see a guy standing on one foot. We see him juggling, tasks, decisions, what have you. But they have to do with the with the earth element. So it has to do with the mundane activities of life, daily routine, maybe a job. Maybe we're trying to figure out, which direction to go in life. But you can see the lemniscate in the middle. It's just the ever evolving sense of continuation, isn't it? Life continues on. No matter what we do, life is going to continue on. We might not like what it looks like, but life is still going to continue on, right? Until it doesn't. And in the background, you see the very wavy ocean out there, with a couple of ships out there navigating through emotional waters, basically. So again, that's what we have here, don't we? We have trying to get through the day while navigating emotional waters. Perhaps maybe you've got a authoritarian or a man in authority in your life that's pretty into drama, maybe, I don't know. And then you've got a woman in your life, or maybe you're the woman who's like, no, let's just be a little more grounded in what we're doing. And then you've got the king who's flipping around everywhere else, and just sort of in his own place, and not really understanding that, he's a person in authority here. He needs to be present in the moment. He needs to be present in the family. He needs to be present in taking care of business. Maybe he's just emotionally not present in people's lives. So it's an interesting foundation, though, if that's the dynamic in a marriage. What are you teaching your kids? Basically, if you have one parent and you typically have one parent that takes on the organizational role and paying the bills and shopping and all of that. You usually have one. Typically, it's the mom. I don't know why. Typically, it is. And then the dad, is out doing what he does. He does the yard maintenance and all of that. And as long as everybody's pulling their weight and contributing to the family, it all works. But if you've got one parent who's off doing their own thing while the other's trying to manage the house and raise the kids and do all of this, well, maybe you have this. Maybe that's what we're seeing here. And it doesn't actually establish a very good, healthy balance that your kids are learning for when they have to go and do this. But it looks like these folks, at least, have maybe learned from this whole process and understood that sometimes you just have to make a choice. And where are you going to go? And it looks to me like what's more in focus is the new life together and new structure together. And you're going to maybe, be aware of the choppy emotional seas that can come up, but, you've put that in the backdrop of it. It's not as important. The most important thing is figuring out where you're going to go, in terms of your life together and this new family that you're starting to, that you basically have started now that you've gotten married. Whether you have kids or not, you still have a family. It's a family of two, so it's still a family. Well, and here we have Kenaz, which is the 6th rune of the Elder Futhark. And here you're looking at the torch, the light of spirit focused outward. We are spirit, after all. We aren't these bodies that we inhabit. We're not the personality. We're not the ego. That's sort of what comes out when we get here and when we focus into form. But make no mistake about it, what drives the vehicle is spirit. We may think that ego is doing it because that's what we're focusing on, a more service to self orientation versus service to others. You stay in that service to others mode. Spirit tends to inform the greater aspect of what you're doing and the greater aspect of self, because that is the greater aspect of self. And the cool part about Kenaz is that, it can be used directionally. If you were to use it in a bind rune, you could use it. In fact, Rido is, let's see. Let me see if I can find it in here. Well, I'll just draw it out. If I can find something to do that on. We talked about this before. What I like to do when I do the runes here. Here's one. I like, especially if they're sort of like compound runes. I like to show what they're comprised of. So of course I got a pen that doesn't work very well. There's Rido. You can see right there. See Kenaz right here. There's Kenaz. But you also see it up here. You see it reversed. So here you have in rhythmic harmony and rhythmic motion, the rhythm of spirit, both within and without. So it's that inner harmony. I mean, we think of it in terms of harmony with others, but in fact, it's really the inner harmony between spirit and ego that we're trying to strike there and trying to blend. And as the 6th rune of the Elder Futhark, we're also looking at, again, higher self-influences, shared purpose, understanding that we're not the only people in this world. There are others that have value and that we need to interact on that level with them. Just all part of the greater aspect of the creator focused into form. Well, this is going to be an easy one. This is Populous. And I'm going to see if I can find another. Oh, well, there it is back there. There's a black Sharpie. Now, Populous is about the crowd. It's about people. Given that it's comprised of a series of 4 dual dots arranged in fire, air, water, and earth. That's the order they're arranged in, top to bottom. The passive influence. And so it's one where you're going to blend with the crowd. The opposite is Vaya, and it would be a series of single dots. And so that would be an active or a projective type of influence or energy. And so with Vaya, you would be paving your own path, right? Blazing your own trail. Whereas Populous, you're kind of going along with the crowd. But you can also look at it in terms of the 4 of wands, you see. I mean, if you ignore this part and just look at Populous, you can kind of see Populous there in a sense, because you're aligning 2 active principles together in unity with one another. So in a sense, you're no longer in resistance with one another. You're coming together in shared purpose, with the light of spirit turned outward to one another with Kenaz. Maybe we are keeping an eye on the future, keeping our options open, keeping our intuition alive so that, we can see things as they come or before they come, maybe, before they arise. But with the idea that our new life together is more important, that's what we juggle. That's what we try to weave together. And we leave the emotions in the back. Yeah, there are going to be choppy seas for this couple, but you know, if we keep an eye to that continued motion of the mundane aspects of our lives, keeping that going in balance, you know, like he's doing. We have a 6 energy, 4 and 2 is 6. And so that's an amplification then of the 3 energy for today. So what it's really saying is that spirit is manifesting this. That this is not coming from a place of ego or self-centeredness, but that we're giving that up, and we're doing so in balanced energy exchange with someone else. Now, whether this has to do with an upcoming marriage, it may, or a relationship that maybe is progressing to a new level, it might be that. But just remember that the commitment that you make to one another, whatever it is, whether, I mean, it could be simply that you're starting a new project, maybe a new job or whatever, but the relationships that you have within whatever this is for you, whatever, situation this is, the relationships that you have to be what the focus is on, and maintaining that easy momentum through it. Emotions are present always because love is there, and when love is there, so is fear. And it might be tempting to, choose fear over love from time to time, especially when things happen. Maybe someone says something to the other person that maybe you don't, maybe it was crappy, maybe it was just mean. I mean, we all have those moments. The bottom line is what you don't want is to have the choppy seas to come in front of the everyday momentum of life. And so I think what the 2 of Pentacles in this case is saying, with respect to what's happening with the other 3 cards, is to keep emotions in check, basically. And don't let them get away from you, because all kinds of things can happen. And then all of a sudden, spirit is no longer informing the process, viewing things with dispassion and no judgment. And then all of a sudden, ego takes over and starts judging the crap out of everything. And that's never a good place for anybody to be. So I think that that's what we're talking about today. Well, cool. It's just kind of a straightforward thing when we have to come into unity with other people, which is pretty much all the time. I don't care if it's out when you're driving on the road. I had somebody, I went up yesterday or Saturday, I went up to town while we were waiting for the Roto-Rooter guy to come. Did he come Saturday? Yeah, he did. And periodically, I have the way my pipes are under my home, they don't slant right, and there's a couple bends, and so things will collect. So every, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, we have to have someone come out, and we tried to snake it ourselves, and we rented one, and it was too big, and it didn't work, and so we had to call somebody. And so he came out on Saturday morning and did a great job. He was just done very, very quickly. Has experience with our particular situation, so he knew what to do. It was just, I mean, I don't know why we even tried to do it ourselves, but you know how it is. And so we had him do it. It was just great. But I went uptown and I'm at the light, and I'm going to make a left, and I'm back because I know how people turn left, they cut their corners and they almost hit you. I don't know how I survived. I don't know how I didn't get hit. A Jeep was traveling so fast when he was turning, he started way back instead of coming up further, cutting your corner and more straight and turning, kind of doing like this. He's doing this, and he nearly took my front end off. And I was back away from, I was like maybe 3 or 4 feet back from the crosswalk. So no reason for him to do that. If I hadn't been, I don't know. I think I might be in the hospital today. So I don't know. But I just had run uptown while the guy had just gotten here, and I had to take some eggs up to a lady I sell eggs to, and that happens. So it's like we don't think, and right there in that moment, that driver and I were in a relationship, and that's my whole point of saying this. We have to think about how we impact others. Are we aloof like the king and really more about, where our own head and heart and emotions are, and all of that, or are we a little bit more focused on what's important? And I just view the Queen in this reading to be focused on what's important, and that's the relationship that we have in our day-to-day living that can either make or break that whole experience. You know, are we thoughtful? Are we generous? Are we compassionate? Or are we self-centered? You know, and every time I see the King of Cups, it's like this little red flag going, uh-oh. So anyhow, well, I think that's it. Again, I'll either do this tonight for tomorrow if we get home today and he calls in and finds out he has to be there tomorrow. But today's orientation this afternoon, so no pressure right now, but I might have to do this tonight, for tomorrow and maybe get it posted for tomorrow. So anyhow, so look for that. Go and check out the new Moon and Rune series on the blog. I think it's going to be all right. I like how it went. I like how it flowed. So I might tweak it a little bit more, but right now I think I have the basic format, but as I go on, we'll see how it works. And if I feel like I need to add something or switch something around a little bit. And then do look for the magical correspondences that are going to be up every so often. And then I've also been putting some stuff up on herbs, so check that out as well. My most recent one was on borage, which I just love. I don't really use it medicinally. I use it for companion planting and to attract pollinators, and my bees from my hives love them. And they're just gorgeous. They spread everywhere, and they make great ground cover. But of course, they cover up other plants. And so, anyway, my chickens love them. They love fresh borage, so that's cool. But anyway, check that out at the blog over at imsteppingaside.com and come back here. We'll see you tomorrow. Be good to yourself. Be good to one another. Blessed be.